And so nothing can reduce the costs of anything, government or private enterprise, more so than mathematically perfected economy, because mathematically perfected economy eradicates all redundant costs. So the question is, well then, if that's really your object, why is it you've deviated from mathematically perfected economy, and how can you possibly compete with that concept? He goes on, to retire public debt. Well, here we have a plagiarist imitating me. First he was advocating a reduction of interest rates would have solved our problems. Still interest, and substantial interest even, which can only multiply artificial indebtedness into terminal failure. And now he's advocating retiring public debt. So he's imitating me. But how is he advocating to do that if 40 plus years ago I proved that there is one and one only way to do that properly, and that is this transformation to mathematically perfected economy, which counts all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, etc., etc., etc. In other words, unless he exactingly plagiarizes mathematically perfected economy in every detail, he doesn't have a hope of accomplishing that in any justifiable manner. He goes on, to restore the authority of Congress to create and regulate money. That's preposterous. You don't have to restore the authority of Congress to create and regulate money. Congress has that authority. The problem is the Congress, of which Mr. Kucinich is a member, needs to abide by its authority, which it has unlawfully delegated to this purported central banking system. But it can't retake that authority in any way which serves us unless the principles are established by which it will serve us in that capacity, which it cannot do by restoring a gold standard, which failed because it couldn't serve us in the first place. It was a very flawed idea. And we'll get to that in a minute when we discuss Mr. Paul. But so he's falling down on point after point after point. Modernize and provide stability for the monetary system of the United States. Well, you know, there's only one thing. Stability means, in effect, proper balance in effect in all regards, because if there isn't proper balance in any regard, this is in truth, it is all of those regards, cases of that regard, are cases of injustice. And injustice is what is the instability, as people are dispossessed and have been terminated in effect by the system. We leave them by the side of the road and continue on down the road as if they're to be forgotten. Stability means never committing these crimes against our own brothers and sisters. And to have that requires accounting for all issues, which has already been done. So what are we doing but pretending to do this, unless you can invalidate mathematically perfected economy, and or unless you have a proof of an alternate solution, which itself requires invalidating the proposition of mathematically perfected economy, which is a proposition that there is one and one only monetary solution, which includes, of course, this fact that all money introduced to circulation has to have an obligation attached to it to retire that money from circulation in direct relationship to the property which is represented by the circulation, or we do not solve inflation and deflation. So, in effect, this proves too then that the promissory obligation is the only proper, stable, potentially stable vehicle for monetization of our production. So this just goes on claiming these objects, all of which are imperfect and are even repetitive in really a truly a bizarre way. He goes on in the same sentence to say retire public debt. He's already said retire public debt above it, and he's saying again to create and regulate money, modernize and provide stability for the monetary system of the United States. A redundant clause. Retire public debt and reduce the cost of public investment for other public purposes. What do you mean? So some purposes are accepted or something? I mean, I'm sorry, fifth grade history project. Anyway, I'll try and scan down this. There were some parts. He goes on to cite findings, purposes, section 2. The Congress finds as follows. No, Dennis Kucinich and Stephen Zarlinga purport to find, which, much of this is common knowledge, and in other cases it's disputable figures. For instance, they basically accept our unemployment figures, which are terribly downwardly skewed. But he goes on, nearly 15 million Americans are currently unemployed, he says. Another 12 million are underemployed. My very term, underemployed. Who came up with that term? I never saw anyone using it before I did. Underemployed. That means that the decline of the system under this escalation of artificial indebtedness has imposed such expenses upon us that we can't, the system can't afford to employ us to the capacities which we might otherwise exercise in rightful production and prosperity. Underemployed. That means you have a college education, but there is no job for the amount of education that you have taken it upon yourself to master. So they're claiming 49 million of Americans go to bed hungry at night. Bad grammar. And an estimated 3 million Americans are homeless. Yeah, well, there's also, as there is underemployed, there is, pseudo-homeless. In other words, you're virtually homeless. And the number there is huge, especially when you take into account, marginalized, ability to persist in servicing your mortgage, or being in some state of foreclosure or threatened foreclosure, and on and on and on. The housing market in terms of construction and sales has undergone an historic decline. And the declining value of housing means Americans' largest single investment, the home. Now here it is. Here's his one foot in capitalism, the other foot in monetary reform. A home is not, if it's an investment in regard to what kind of quality serves you, so that the home, being what the home needs to be, is as economical an implementation of a home as is practical. In other words, a little bit of quality goes a long way in terms of longevity, and that longevity under mathematically perfected economy makes a home far more economical. If two nails in the end of every stud in the walls instead of one increase the lifespan of the home from 50 years to 150 years, then we've actually decreased the cost of the house to 1/3 because of increasing the lifespan of it, and our obligation being to pay the principal out of circulation at the rate of depreciation or consumption of the related property. So lifespan is important, and true economic considerations become important. But in terms of investment, a home isn't an investment, and we are in error to look at homes as investment, that as to jump in glee that the costs of our houses go up, ostensibly go up, as a consequence of this obfuscation of the currency. In effect, do we exalt that the price of gasoline has gone up? Therefore, being as we have some in our tanks, we're that much better off? No, it's the cost of gasoline to us which is important. It's an increased cost. Our houses do not appreciate in value. They only depreciate in value. That nonetheless they are made to cost more to us is an offense against us. After all, when you sell your home, being as you need a home, all you can get is another $2 million home, which is actually a custom-built colonial home built in 1963 for $35,000. You see, you've only paid lifetime after lifetime after lifetime all that we can spend for that home. You see, and all you can ever get for it is another like home. You see, so these are actually offenses against us. And so this idea that homes are investments and they should go up in purported value, which is actually cost to us, is a very destructive idea. And when you look at the problem or the issue, what you have is this: all that we ever get for our homes is the principal, and yet we're paying all the interest on that principal. So how are we ever ahead? So he goes on to cite the cost of higher education and affordable health care. All of these rising costs are consequences of the obfuscation of the currency, which, in multiplying artificial indebtedness upon us perpetually at an even inherently escalating rate, forces industry to increase its prices, because industry is the engine of paying, of servicing this escalating sum of artificial debt. And being as the market can afford the increasing costs of industry, this compromises the margins of solubility for industry, and eventually causes industry to fail. And as we look around us, what do we see? Indeed, but that that this system of terminal failure has expatriated our industry. So he goes on, citing the American Institute of Architects as if there's something, relevant in their estimation that there are $3 million in unmet infrastructure needs, or $3 trillion, well, that's a significant cost indeed, and indeed,